Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Lebanon, General Michel Sleiman, represented by the Minister of Industry, Mr. Sabonjian, Eminencies, Excellencies, Ministers, Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be now the second time this year here in Beirut. The last time, just 2 months ago, I was here when the Konrad Adenauer Foundation opened a office, opened the new regional rule of law program for Middle East and North Africa, and a new country office here in Beirut. We are gathered here this time for the first edition of the Beirut Conference organized by Unia Pak and Ma'am in cooperation with our foundation. I would like to join in welcoming all the participants and guests to this conference. I do wish all of you lively and interesting discussions of the topics and fruitful networking, and last but not least, pleasurable stay here in this wonderful city. Maybe a word to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. We are a German foundation of Christian democratic orientation. In Germany, we have regional offices for civic education. At the same time, we have around 100 offices abroad with over 200 projects in more than 120 countries. At home and abroad, our aim is to promote freedom, liberty, peace, and justice. We focus on consolidating democracy, the unification of Europe, as well as on developing cooperation. The situation in which the world finds itself in the midst of the second decade of the 21st century is challenging. Economic upheavals and ecological problems are challenging decision makers all over the globe. The recent financial and economic crisis restated and intensified the calls for responsibility in business and the financial markets. Stakeholder demand foresighted and value-based orientated management in order to avoid risk and to secure jobs. Enterprises nowadays feel increasingly confronted with expectations to not only produce goods and services, but also to accept social responsibility by advocating common interests of society, such as environmental protection, poverty alleviation, and avoiding corruption. Expectations which go far beyond their own profit interests. The modern understanding of the concept of corporate social responsibility thus describes a normative obligation of the entrepreneur to act in accordance with the social aims and values of the surrounding society. It is assumed that there is a strategic win-win situation where doing well by doing good combines advantages of business management with political inclusive demands. Of course, corporate social responsibility, or CSR, efforts have also found their critics. For some, the new corporate social responsibility movement will simply increase business costs, reduce welfare, and undermine the market economy. The greatest potential to harm, as seen by these critics, is the attempt to regulate the world as a whole in the name of CSR, imposing common international standards which would reduce the potential for trade and investment and hold back the development of poor countries. Increased economic and political interconnectedness has led to greater growth and competition in many countries around the world. While these developments have produced many economic benefits, they have also generated dissatisfaction with some of the consequences of globalization and liberalization. Therefore, many are saying that an open global economy requires an international framework. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm convinced that the next 2 days will open up the perspectives, models, risks, and benefits of CSR. We will hear about practices of corporate social responsibility or business virtue which improve the workplace and benefit society and also go above and beyond what companies are legally required to do. In view of Germany's coping with the current international financial and economic crisis, once again, the social market economy, Germany's distinctive model of coordinated social and economic policy, has received considerable attention. In order to explain the relative robustness and continuing attractiveness of this model, it is important to recall the formation and definition of the social market economy, which was developed and implemented in times of economic, political, and social change under the leadership of Konrad Adenauer, the name my foundation is bearing. In the social market economy, we are trying to bring together free economy and free markets on the one hand and a strong state on the other, and to not see a necessary contradiction between them. It is a concept of regulatory policy. It combines free enterprise with social justice and therefore serves for the betterment of society. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just coming from Asia. We had gathered all our representatives of the foundation in Hong Kong to discuss what we will further do. And we have to be aware, on the one hand, I noticed that there is a lot of demand on to know what social market economy is, how this is functioning, but on the other side, we have what is called the Chinese model. And we have to see that despite of its deficiencies, very large gap between rich and poor, the problem of the migration workers, environmental disasters, corruption. At the same time, we see that this model at least delivers a substantial growth and is reducing poverty. CSR is lacking totally. So there is another model, and I think it is worthwhile for us here as well to advocate the model we are standing for, and that is the model of justice, that is the model to promote peace and to promote welfare to everybody of society. For our organization, represented here in Lebanon, the promotion of rule of law is in the center of what we are doing. A functioning, reliable, and democratically legitimate legal system is the basis of efficient and sustainable economic activity. It creates the preconditions for a strong economy, an efficient and citizen-friendly state administration, and compliance with the principles of good governance. Regulating elements and consistent supervision ensure that rules are adhered to and violations penalized. This is not an end in itself. Regulation is the appropriate and correct approach to shape incentives in a competitive economy in such a way that decentralized competitive activities benefits societies. Those legal systems that adhere to the rule of law will encourage activities and investment by compliant, non-corrupt corporations that maintain responsible labor, environmental and other corporate practices and advance private interests in a manner that benefits the broader society. We need an international consensus to enable prosperity, social justice, and sustainable economic activity based on shared principles and values. Even at times of crisis, the positive effects of globalization must not be put at risk by national and regional protectionism. Taking into account variations between cultures and societies, an orientation to the common good, democratic legitimacy, and human dignity are the foundations upon which such a consensus shall be built. In Lebanon, our host country, we find such mentioned variations between cultures and societies even in a small geographical territory. An even number of Muslims and Christians live and work here together, and interreligious dialogue is a daily practice. The Beirut Conference is following up on this interreligious dialogue, and based on common principles between Islam and Christianity will open better ways to achieve social justice, prosperity, and sustainable development in the region and beyond. Then the ideals of the so-called Arab Spring can be realized, and peace, freedom, justice, and prosperity for the people can be achieved. Thank you very much for your attention. Shukran.